It's a study in contrasts. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, the candidates aspiring to the U.S. presidency, displayed fiercely divergent visions and values once again in their televised debate. In one corner, Harris for the Democrats. The former prosecutor pledges generational change and an opportunity economy, strong alliances and support for America's friends abroad. In the other corner, former President Donald Trump for the Republicans, promising to hike tariffs, cut taxes, and shut down immigration. One thing is certain, the 2024 vote will deeply impact U.S. relations with Europe and China, U.S. support for allies in Ukraine and the Middle East. So we're asking, which worldview will the U.S. choose? Hello and welcome to the Point. It is a pleasure to greet our guests. Daniel Benjamin is president of the American Academy, a transatlantic institution here in Berlin. Eric Kirschbaum is an author and a freelance journalist who's written for media including Reuters and the Los Angeles Times. And Stormy Annika Milner is director of the Aspen Institute, Germany. It's great to have all of you with us. Stormy, what struck you most about the debate? Were there particularly telling moments or confrontations or exchanges?
First of all, I was very much looking forward to this debate because it was a big moment for Kamala Harris. First presidential debate and first time also meeting Donald Trump, and the expectations in her were huge. So I was very much looking forward seeing how she would actually fare, how she would do. And in the beginning, I could see that she was a little bit anxious, excited. You could hear it in the breathing. And then there was this clicking point when she became really assured and she talked to the voters, she talked to him. It was almost like she is in a courtroom, and I found her pretty persuasive. And what we heard in the beginning is, I think that she succeeded in painting two different pictures. Her as the younger, more progressive, reliable, on-point person, being structured, having a plan for the economy, many other things, and the person who listens to people and who would more unite than divide. And then she painted the other picture of a Trump who's an older man, who's ranting, who's maybe losing his line of thought, who doesn't have a point of view, who's not listening to the people, and who is the past while she is the future. And I thought that she did pretty well on this.
And those are exactly the two worldviews we mean, of course, with today's title. Daniel, who, if either of the candidates, actually emerges strengthened from this, in your view? Under conventional thinking, debates don't really matter all that much. Do you think this one did?
Debates historically don't matter much, but this was a remarkable one, and most of the expert commentary afterward suggested that she won the most lopsided victory in this debate, possibly in the history of televised presidential debates. It was an important moment for her because there are still plenty of Americans who say they don't really know her. I think it was clear that she passed what's called the commander-in-chief test. She appeared poised, intelligent, on top of her brief, and composed. And so in that sense, it was an enormously important door opener for her with a lot of the American public. It was also, I think, an example of, or it presented Donald Trump at his weakest. And there was just so much incoherence and word salad, and his vocabulary has shrunk so much that it was really, absolutely shocking.
We're going to take a look later on at some of his sound bites, but let me ask you this. There was apparently at least one heretofore undecided voter who was convinced by the debate. Taylor Swift issued an endorsement for Kamala Harris directly after the debate ended. Would you say an endorsement like that, or endorsements by Republicans like the former Vice President Dick Cheney and his daughter Liz Cheney, will they make a difference for Kamala Harris?
They sure won't hurt. Taylor Swift has about 300 million Instagram followers, and she has shown that she is able to get people to register to vote. I don't think there's been a lot of survey work to find out how many Swifties have changed their views or gone out and voted when they weren't going to. But I think you have to see that as a huge plus, and we know the campaign wanted that a lot. Now, as for Cheney, you know, Dick Cheney is as Republican, old-style Republican as you can find in the U.S. And I don't know if it will make a big difference, but it certainly creates what you might call a permission structure for traditional Main Street Republicans to do something that they never thought they would do in their life and cross the aisle and vote for a Democrat. And we've all been wondering, where are Main Street Republicans who just care about fiscal responsibility and a strong defense and a really powerful foreign policy? Where are they going to go? I think Dick Cheney gave them a place to go. We'll see if they follow.
Eric, it was mentioned by Daniel that, in fact, 28% of Americans in a poll prior to the debate, those surveyed, said they didn't have a good sense of who Kamala Harris is and they needed to get to know her better. Daniel just told us he thinks that she did actually accomplish that. Would you agree?
She accomplished that. She showed herself to be presidential, but she avoided a lot of the questions. She spent almost half of her time attacking Trump. She got under his skin. She did a very good job of taking him out of his game and making him talk about himself and the past rather than the future. So she did a very good job on that, but I'm not sure there's a lot of undecided voters who know a lot more about Kamala Harris now, other than she did a solid job, did a fine job. But at the end of the debate, Trump finally got back on his horse, got back into the game, and raised a question that everybody wants to know. If she wants to do all these great things, these wonderful things, why hasn't she done them in the last 3.5 years? And that's the main issue of this election, I think, is going to be the economy and inflation, which is a big issue for a lot of voters, especially in these Midwestern swing states away from the coast. So, the elites, the journalists might think Kamala Harris did a very good job, and she did a strong job, but I'm not sure it's going to move the needle a lot. And we know that these debates don't usually change that much, except for in June when Trump knocked Biden out of the race. That was a knockout. And so Trump, by the way, was the most experienced debater in U.S. history. This was the 7th debate. So
we're going to take a closer look at some of the issues that you mentioned in just a moment. But let me ask you this, Stormy. So far, Kamala Harris has made a point of not playing the race card. One of the debate moderators reminded her that Trump had said a few weeks ago that she only recently turned black. That's a direct quote. And she simply decried Trump's use of the same old tired playbook and his attempt to divide Americans. Does race actually matter in this election?
I would say it does. It does, also on the topics, but also on the people who you want to reach. I think what her campaign team did was also looking very closely at previous elections and campaigns. And I think they looked very closely at what also Clinton did back then. And Clinton a lot of times played the woman card, so to say, and talked about the glass ceiling and not being able to push through the glass ceiling. And that's another topic, or another, so to say, narrative Kamala Harris is not pushing. So she is, on one hand side, not pushing the race ticket, so to say, but also not pushing the woman issues, so to say. And I think this is consciously done because she needs to not just reach the democratic and progressive bases, but she also needs to eat into a part of the electorate which is voting or more rooting for Trump. And this is the white, lower class, blue-collar worker in the swing states. And we know that it all comes down to the swing states and persuading the swing states voters. So she needs to have a projection which is, so to say, or offers a home for more people.
And in fact, the one card in the identity area that she does seem to be playing is her youth. She's nearly 20 years younger than Donald Trump. And she talked about generational change. Daniel, do you think that will win over some of the voters that she needs to get if she wants to succeed in November?
I think it will certainly help. The campaign before Biden dropped out was beset by incredible unpopularity because of the belief that we just had two stale old choices.
In fact, they call some potential voters double haters because they said they just couldn't stand to vote for either.
And that's one thing. And so she is a relatively fresh breath of air in that regard. The other thing is that, one of the big questions is, will young people turn out to vote? And we've seen a surge in registrations. We've seen a surge of interest in that cohort. And I think that is all to her benefit. Young voters are the ones who seem to be most turned off by Donald Trump. And so I think that emphasizing the generational change is hugely important.
So let's take a closer look now at a debate that, in fact, was chock full of issues, yet relatively light on policy.
It was their first face-to-face encounter, and the two spared nothing in their 90-minute TV duel.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election.
Trump tried to score economic points. Price hikes and inflation have Americans worried. Trump said he will cut taxes, but only for the rich, countered Harris. The issue of migration is on people's minds. Trump made unsubstantiated claims about migrants from Haiti.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
Two contrasting worldviews competing in the U.S. election, Harris versus Trump. Who has the better arguments and better chances?
Pass that question on to you, Eric, and particularly in regard to inflation and economics, which are absolutely top of mind for many, if not most, voters. President Biden, because of those topics, has had very low approval ratings for more than half of his presidency. Numerous commentators suggested it would be very important for Kamala Harris to distance herself from Biden. She was offered the opportunity to do so in the very first question that she got, and she didn't really grab it. Will that hurt her?
No, she evaded it, in fact, and that's definitely a big problem for Harris. She's got to go to this balancing act to distance herself from Biden, and yet she's Biden's vice president, so she can't do that. She might turn off some of the conservative voters in the Midwest that she desperately needs, so she's got a difficult balancing act to do, and the economy is a big issue. Inflation is a big issue. I mean, objectively, the U.S. economy is in pretty good shape thanks to Biden, Inflation Reduction Act, et cetera, but inflation is a big problem. People in America feel it. They complain about groceries going through the roof, and Harris hasn't really come up with big answers that have satisfied a lot of people. 4 years under Trump, people have nostalgic, positive feelings about the stock market booming, about things going well. So Trump is definitely stronger on the economy, and Kamala Harris has a lot of work to do in the next 8 weeks to try to show that she has a bona fide good plan that will help the average American.
And Stormy, in fact, going into the debate, polls showed that a far larger share of voters ascribes economic competence to Trump than to Harris. Now, she did make some broad proposals about an opportunity economy and measures to help families who are struggling with high prices. Do you think that those will convince that set of voters that, in fact, she has an economic plan?
So first of all, it's also a challenge for her being really going down into the different policy areas, because she needs to talk to a wide range of Democratic voters and the undecided. So she needs to address the progressives, offer the progressives something, but also the conservatives. So I think for the debate, it was a strategy also not to go too deeply into the individual issue areas. But she also did other speeches where she did go more into economic issues, where she became more concrete. And she is offering, or what she wants to do, is an opportunity economy with a strong focus on the middle class and the lower income classes. She wants to lower taxes, especially for lower middle income classes. She also addresses inflation by looking at prices, especially in the food sector. And she sees there's uncompetitive behavior, which she wants to go after. And she wants to give tax credits to families, to first-time homeowners, but also to small, medium businesses and startups. So there is already a lot in there. Coming back to your question, will this persuade the unpersuaded voters? I'm not so sure yet, because there are other topics as well which matter, and that is migration, and that is also...
We'll move to that in a moment.
Yeah.
But Daniel, you, I think, wanted to respond to something Eric said.
So a couple of things. One is that inflation's down to under 2.5%. And this is right around the time when people are making up their minds. It is true, inflation is a sticky factor. People remember it. A lot of the inflation we're having is due to all the stimulus that was pumped in by Trump and by Biden during the pandemic. But to me, the key thing is whether or not people are going to actually think about the core of the kind of economic policies that are being proposed. And the central thing for Trump is essentially moving from taxes to tariffs. Yeah. And he claims that we're going to have some extraordinary windfall by putting up tariffs on imports from 10 to 100, 200, 300%. So, that, first of all, has an inflationary
he explicitly denied that. He said, Kamala Harris said, well, this is basically a sales tax on American consumers. Yeah. And he denied that. Do you think that resonates?
Well, I don't think there's an economist in America, except maybe a few working for Trump, who believes that tariffs are, as Donald Trump claims, paid by the exporting country. Ultimately, and that it stops there and that isn't passed on to consumers. And his notion that we're going to suddenly have a sovereign wealth fund, a la Saudi Arabia or the UAE, I think there's just a question of whether in the next 2 months, people put on their thinking caps and say, wait, is this a real world prospect? Now, people have fallen for fantasies before. We'll see if they go for
American
it this time.
voters don't usually put their thinking caps on before elections.
Yes.
And also, we have seen that before, right? In the first Trump administration, he raised tariffs. And that hurt a lot of people. And it was still the same people who were hurt by this voting again Republican in the midterm elections and then also in the next presidential elections. So, I don't know if this is really understood that this is going to hurt individual households, although the economists clearly also already calculate what that would cost.
So let's make a cut under that. I'm sorry, but since our time is limited, I want to get to migration because that is another major issue at the top of many voters' minds, Eric. And there were numerous mentions of immigration, to put it mildly. In fact, Donald Trump circled back to it again and again and put out disproven claims that there has been a massive surge in the entry of murderers, lunatics, and criminals, as he said, into the U.S. He also repeated disproven claims that immigrants, we heard it in the report, that immigrants have been eating people's pets. There was a fact check. He denied it. Will this nonetheless appeal to voters who are worried about migration?
Absolutely. I think the opinion polls are quite clear that immigration and the problems with the open borders are perceived to be open borders are a real problem. Biden has, with the resolution, drastically reduced that, but the problem is definitely there, and it's an issue where Trump is seen as strong. He pushed for the wall in his first term, didn't get it because Congress didn't give him the money, but it's an issue that definitely reverberates. You hear about it when you talk to people in the U.S., and it's a problem that, for Kamala Harris, it's going to remain a problem for her right up to November 5th.
And there is a crisis at the border. That can't be denied. And the Biden administration did offer a bill which almost made it through Congress and then was killed by Trump because of election campaign strategy considerations. But while we know this, the general public didn't know it.
And of course, Kamala Harris did point it out. But again, whether that sinks in. Let me ask about a third major topic. Abortion. And in fact, after that rather diffident start that you mentioned to the debate, that is where Kamala Harris really hit her stride. To what degree do you think her fervent warnings about a Trump abortion ban, as she calls it, will mobilize women and get them to the polls in a way that could really turn to a victory for her?
I think it's a really decisive issue, but we should also not forget that there is, a big conservative base in the United States of people who are more critical towards abortion. And they tend more to the Republicans and to the Trump camp. And on the other hand, the progressives stand for, her anyway already. And I'm not 100% sure, and I would be interested in hearing from you two, if this is going to persuade the undecided voters in the swing states.
I'm just going to let them do a yes or a no. Daniel, yes or no?
Oh, yes, it's her strongest issue.
It'll raise the turnout for sure and help Democrats if she keeps talking about it.
So we're going to stop our discussion of domestic policy with that and take a look at foreign policy. And in fact, foreign policy is generally regarded as pretty low on the list of what turns elections, low on the list of U.S. voters' concerns. Nonetheless, the results in November could have a major impact on the global economy and on the conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza.
The war in Gaza. Both candidates want it to end quickly.
That has to stop. The killing has to stop.
Both call Hamas a terrorist organization, and there is no doubt America will remain a reliable partner for Israel. However, the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip and the Netanyahu government have been more harshly criticized by the Democrats and Harris than by Trump's Republicans. What is the candidate's stance on NATO and the war in Ukraine? The U.S. is by far Ukraine's biggest supporter and the biggest NATO donor. Time and again, Trump has said if Europe doesn't fund NATO enough, it is not entitled to protection. For Harris, NATO is a vital instrument for strengthening American influence globally, and she stands by support for Ukraine.
As president, I will stand strong with Ukraine and our NATO allies.
Regardless of who will be setting foreign policy in America after the election, the United States is shifting its focus away from Europe and toward Asia, especially to its major competitor, China. Harris or Trump? What can the world expect in terms of U.S. foreign policy?
Daniel, would you say that Harris pledged to stand with America's friends abroad rather than play to the strong man? Do you think that that will win enough votes to ensure that she does, in fact, convince not only the Democratic base, but the undecided voters that she needs?
I think that it strengthens support for her with the Democratic base. To be sure, the Democrats are right now the party of alliances and of strong international presence. I don't think many undecideds will be basing their vote on foreign policy. I think it is quite possible that more Dick Cheney Republicans will be, and people who are actually dyed-in-the-wool Republicans might cross over. But foreign policy is not the ticket to the election.
Normally it's not, but I think Kamala Harris with War and Peace, especially Ukraine, very cleverly in Pennsylvania appealed to the 800,000 Polish
absolutely.
immigrants, and maybe she'll win a few of those. And Pennsylvania, as you know, is absolutely critical for whoever's going to win the election.
And let me ask you this, Eric, because in fact, Donald Trump was pressed on whether he even wants Ukraine to win the war. He said he would end it overnight. And then he was pressed, and he evaded that question. He did not answer whether he wants Ukraine to win. What would that mean if Trump wins the election?
Good question. He keeps talking about he'll end the war in a day. Presumably, East Ukraine will be part of Russia. And Kamala Harris rightly points that Poland is going to be worried about that, and Europe will be worried about that. But as Daniel mentioned, foreign policy is usually not a big issue in the campaign, but it's interesting how clever Kamala Harris was to pick out an element of that to try to win a few votes in Pennsylvania.
Stormy, watching this as a German based here in Europe, what would you say in regard to both the trade and economy issues as well as the security issues? What does this choice essentially mean for Europe?
Yeah, so in general, the United States is a really important partner to us, both economically as well as security-wise. And on the matter of security and Russia's war against Ukraine, I think where we can we would have a more reliable partner with the Harris administration, and a lot of continuity from what we've seen with Biden. But what I think we need to be also very conscious of is that there will be a demand that we take up our own responsibility and also invest in our own security. And that is something which we've heard already from the Obama administration, then Trump, and now even Biden, and I think she's going to continue this. And that would be in our own interest to invest in our capabilities and defense and security. So she would do that as well, while still being also a very good, I would assume, a good transatlantic partner.
Last question, and it goes to the worldview. And we heard such a clear explication of these different worldviews at the end. Trump's closing words: we're a failing nation in serious decline. We will end up in World War III. Harris, optimism and hope. Fear card or hope card? Which wins?
Hope. Americans love hope.
Usually, yeah, but it's too close to call. It's going to go right till November 5th.
Stormy.
It comes down to the swing states.
And which one is likely to prevail in the swing states?
Well, I think it's still too early to call. There is still a pretty long, how would you say, home stretch until you get to the goal. So she still has a lot to do.
Thank you very much. I hope we'll have a chance to look at it once again before the election and figure out what happened in the home stretch. Greatly appreciate you being with us. Thanks to our viewers as well.